1981, and that was less than 200 pages.
But it didn't have the pictures in it.
Huh? No, well, drawings back in 80,
Oh, yeah.
sketch drawings.
Yeah. Stick figures, backs of napkins and things.
All right, looks like we're at time. Could we please get started? It's a workshop for June 26, 2018. If we could please call the roll.
Councilmember Lewis.
Here.
Councilmember Lehman is absent. Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Councilmember Mokel.
Here.
And Mayor Mars.
Here, thank you. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Any changes, deletions, additions?
Nothing from staff, sir.
All right.
Make a motion to
Councilor
approve
White.
the agenda.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as stated. Further discussion? Discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now I'd like to call and recognize any resident citizen that would like to come forward and make comment on an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record on an item not on the agenda. Seeing none, we will move ahead to our workshop 5A, Envision Shakopee, draft review and discussion. And Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I just kind of wanted to give a little introductory remarks on the document that we're going to be reviewing tonight. First of all, I want to say that I'm extremely pleased as to where we are currently with this draft. And it should be reminded everybody that this is a draft. It certainly is not complete. After tonight, tomorrow we'll be talking with the public in regards to it. But it's really, well, frankly, it's visionary, and it's visionary for us. And I think that if you look at it to compare it to other comp plans out there, you'll see that it is strikingly different in lots of ways, which I'm going to just touch on very briefly. First of all, our process. Our process did not start with staff sitting in a back room and trying to decide the future of Shakopee. Our process spent over 8.5 months before anything was really defined, 8.5 months of talking with the public. We don't have an appendix here, but there'll be an appendix that'll go in detail in regards to that process so people understand what occurred to get this visionary statement and document that we have today. I'm extremely pleased with this in one way, probably more than other, as I've said all day today to people talking about it. Whether you have a law degree or whether you are just a normal person who just has interest in what the city's doing, this can be read by everybody and understood by everybody. It's very clear language. We had a lot of discussion about that as we were putting the draft together, that this should not be planning language. This should not be, engineering language. This should be readable language that normal, everyday people can understand. And it does that. You'll notice that there are photos, there are diagrams, there are graphs, all which help explain what we're trying to achieve here. And probably more photos than any planning document I've ever seen. And again, that goes to that understandability, that readability of the document as a whole. This document really does strive to tell the future of Shakopee, at least into 2040 and beyond. It's a document that really reflects the will of the people. We still have a lot of tweaking to do. Even as I was reading through it today, there's some language that we need to clean up. There's some sentence structure that's a little bit off, but generally speaking, I would consider this to be an 85% document, absent input from council and absent input from the public. But you'll see that the central structure of this is what I call big ideas. If we're going to look here, then this is where our range is. But if we have big ideas and really look visionary and say, what if? Then we have all this to play with. That's exactly what this particular document does. And with that, Mr. Kursky, if you'd like to come on up and introduce our guests, as well as Eric, who is pulling all the weight on this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Thank you to the mayor and council for letting staff, I think, move forward with a pretty transformational document. I think that it's been all of your leadership and support over the past year that's got it to this point, and we're not at the finish line yet, but I also want to thank our funders, which was you all, plus the CDA and the Met Council and Blue Cross Blue Shield, because without their support, we would not have been able to do, I think, as great a document as you see. And I think a lot of this credit really goes to Eric Weiss. He's been a champion for this project from day one. He's been a champion about the process. He has pushed back when we've pushed. And I think a lot of credit to where we are today for this community really goes to him. Without further ado, Eric.
And this would be the 2018 Minnesota Planner of the Year, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make sure. I wasn't sure.
Thank you for that. So I want to thank you. This is an exciting point in the planning process, a huge milestone for us to be here with a draft plan. It's been a year of work and study and listening, and I think we have a plan that represents the full community and the potential of Shakopee. So just a reminder of kind of our process, where we're at right now. We're entering another phase of community engagement now with the draft plan prepared. We have an open house tomorrow night at the community center starting at 6:30. I'm hoping for a good crowd there. And then staff will begin to shop the plan around. We're planning to be at Rhythm on the Rails, at the farmers market, at some other community events, so that we can hear from the community their thoughts on our draft here. As Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Kursky said, we're also entering a time of refinement where we will continue to edit and really make the plan that 100% draft. And then we will be bringing the plan back to council in September. We do have to have the body authorize staff to send the plan out for adjacent and affected jurisdictional review, which is a 6-month process in which we can still move forward the plan, continue to refine, and do things like update our website, create collateral materials. We recognize that this is a big document. This is a 400-page document. It needs to be digestible to the average person. So we, during this next 8 months, will continue to make this an easy-to-read, easy-to-use plan. We will continue to update our website. We will create brochures. We will create, use the executive summary. Whatever we can do so that this is a document that the average person can pick up and understand where the city's going in the future. In my initial discussions with community members, we've been talking about the 10 community priorities and the 12 big ideas, and it's been very positive. It's been having those 10 community priorities and those 12 big ideas has been something that is more digestible for people. They can really get kind of the cliff notes of the plan and really understand what the direction is, and have heard very positive things from people. So we have Justin Goodwin and Darren Meyer here with us tonight from MKSK. Going to go through kind of the high level of the plan and the outline here. We likely, unless the mayor would like to go page by page, won't go page by page tonight. But we definitely want to have opportunities for you to provide detailed feedback, and we will do whatever is easiest for you to do that, whether it's a sit down or email or even your written hand notes. So we want to make sure that we incorporate that into this draft. So I will turn it over to Justin.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be back here in Shakopee. We enjoy every visit that we're able to make. So Darren and I like coming here. Darren has family nearby, so it's a nice little vacation for him as well. So we're pleased to be at this point in the planning process. It was about a year ago when we made our first trip to Shakopee following being awarded the contract to really kick off this planning process. And we've been hard at work over the past year through the community engagement, through working back and forth with staff on ideas and content and analysis to make sure we can get this plan to the point where it's going to serve all of you as a tool for the decisions that you make and provide that vision that Mr. Reynolds was describing, that the average citizen in Shakopee can understand what the direction of the community is. So I have a few slides here that'll go through. I want to go all the way back to, you may recall a slide very similar to this from the first presentation that we gave to you back in July of last year, thinking about the overarching goals of the process of creating this vision for the community and some questions that we started this process with. So things like, how do you as decision makers and community leaders, how do you provide the most efficient services to the people who live in your community, the people that conduct business in your community? How do you make your community remain economically competitive and viable in a fast-changing marketplace that we have in this country? How can you improve the quality of life for the people that live here, that call Shakopee home? And that's really, those are some of the core questions that we undertook this planning process with and trying to answer, and trying to provide a vision for how you can make decisions with those things in mind. And at a high level, for us, a good, effective, comprehensive plan, it does a couple of things. It provides you all, the decision makers, you today and those who will follow you in the future, with a clear guidebook, a shared vision and set of strategies that you will be able to make decisions within a context of where the community has said it wants to go in the future. And it allows the citizens in the community to also understand that those decisions are being made within that context, that as you make capital budget decisions or policy decisions, that you have something to look back to and say, is this decision in line with this broader vision and this set of strategies that we've established? It also allows the private market, people who own land, conduct business, and also are making important decisions in and about your community, to understand what the community's vision is. So it allows for an alignment of decisions made by the public through government and through private decision makers by individuals to ultimately advance the objectives of the entire community forward. That's what we're trying to do with this comprehensive plan. So Eric already touched on a little bit of the timeline. We don't have to dwell on this, but again, we started about a year ago, spent a lot of time engaging the community through a wide variety of means. I have a slide that touches on that. And we moved through a few phases of the process up through the end of last year, and then with our second public workshop at the end of January, that really began what we call the documentation phase. So that's what we've been doing over the course of the last few months. You haven't seen us here in town, but we have been regularly communicating with staff. And that brings us to this point where we have a substantial draft of the plan that we're calling the public review draft. Emphasis on draft, as has been noted already. There's plenty to refine and to adjust and to fill in around the edges, but we're really excited to put a draft out there for everybody in the community to start to get an idea of what the big ideas and some of the vision and direction that's taking shape in this plan will be. Really what we're doing today is talking about the structure of the document and, again, some of those big ideas, the big high-level recommendations that are in the plan. I want to point out that this plan at this point, and at the point at which it gets to a version that council is comfortable adopting, that would be sometime presumably next year after it goes through the full community review and adjacent jurisdiction review. That's really a starting point. The plan itself is a starting point for a number of other decisions and actions that you'll all be taking over the course of the next number of years. So this is a 2040 comprehensive plan. It's a vision for the next 20-ish years. You'll be doing another major update in 10 years. As somebody said as the meeting was getting started, this is a flexible living document, as all plans are. You have to be able to respond to changing circumstances and conditions. But again, we have a shared vision that's established with the plan. And it will allow council to make a number of more specific decisions. There will be things like capital improvements programming, specific policy decisions. There may be more detailed studies or focus area plans that might result from some of the recommendations of this document to really advance through creating and achieving some of the visions and recommendations of the document. So again, the comprehensive plan, it's a starting point for a number of other things that will follow through the course of many decisions on the public and private side. So a little bit of overview. I think you're all familiar with some of this material that we've shared at previous work sessions. We went through, again, a broad set of community engagement approaches, both our consultant team and working closely with staff, through our public workshops, through Eric and other staff out on the street at events like Rhythm on the Rails, or visiting the schools or businesses, surveys, also taking advantage of some surveys conducted by others, by Scott County, for instance, and trying to agglomerate all of the forms of community engagement that we could get our hands on to really understand what the sentiment is here in Shakopee. What are the big issues that are of concern to the people who live here, conduct business here, and what are the priorities? And from there, as I think you're all familiar with by now, we identified early on some themes, and those evolved into a set of 10 priorities that you have on the screen here. So it's wide-ranging, everything from just making sure that the plan really is providing that overall strategic direction for the community to more specific things like revitalizing downtown or connecting people with parks and trails. Obviously, fiscal stability and a strong economy, those are all priorities of the community here. Housing has gotten a lot of discussion, as I know you are all aware. And from there, that really is the framework that we started with when we began to create this document. And I think a little difficult maybe to read on the screen here, but what we have, I know a number of you have actually printed out the entire draft. It is a hefty document, but as Mayor Mars noted, some previous plans are even larger. So we tried to strike a balance here. I recommend actually dividing it up into chunks. So it's a little more digestible. And we do have eight large components of the plan is how it's divided out. And there really are 5 critical sections. The economic environment, where we provide goals and strategies related to Shakopee's future economic competitiveness. The community environment, where we focus on housing and community identity and the sense of place for those who live here. The built environment, so these are some of the more traditional pieces of a comprehensive plan: a land use plan, transportation plan, infrastructure goals and strategies. Also the natural environment that goes hand in hand with the built environment. So the park system, the environmental system that you have here, considerations regarding the resilience of your environment, whether it's the watershed, the Minnesota River, the natural landscape that you have here. And finally, recommendations involving governance, how the city administration works, communication and engagement both internally within the structure of government and with the community as a whole, and finance. So there are a wide variety of goals and specific strategies and tactics. I don't even have the actual number of all of them memorized, but they're all pulled together in the implementation section as well. And that's a piece of the plan that over the course of the next review period that we're entering, that will be a piece that needs to be fleshed out. What are the priorities amongst all of these different goals and strategies? What are the things that the city thinks these are the ones that we need to focus on first? And how we might start to apply some resources, assign some responsibilities, whether it's partners outside of city government or departments within the city government. So we certainly, I've got some slides later that if you wanted to get into any of the specific goals, we can cover those, but we wanted to kind of focus on the higher level pieces of the plan here. There are a lot of ideas in this document. And as Mr. Reynolds noted, we have a set of big ideas, and that's really what we wanted to focus on here this evening. So we have a set of 12 what we call big ideas, and then some envisioning of what some of those ideas could look like in the community. The first one is creating a fresh impression. So thinking about Shakopee's position in this region as a destination for regional entertainment, also for business and commerce, making sure that as people are entering the community, they're impressed by what they see. So that could be things as specific as beautifying Highway 101, so really set that first impression as people are entering the community. Thinking about other community gateways, that might be through signage, landscaping, creating a consistent identity that as somebody enters Shakopee, they know they're entering Shakopee and they're left with a positive feeling about this community. And that can be part of an economic development strategy, attracting businesses, retaining businesses that want to be in a place that they know that the community cares about how it looks and how it presents itself to visitors. Rediscovering the river. So as we were talking about earlier this afternoon, the city's done a great job at creating this gem of a park with Huber Park. It took a long time to implement that plan over the course of many years. We think it sets a great stage for attracting people down to the river, and we heard a lot of interest in people wanting to connect with the river here in Shakopee. It's an incredible asset that you have. Access to it is a little difficult, and we've identified in this plan a number of points at which we can possibly improve access through trail connections, through edge improvements along the riverbank itself, just opening up views to it in some locations. And also thinking about that maybe the next phase of civic space along the river, and we'll touch on that in a few slides. And also strategically locating opportunities for development, high-value development, that would give people access who may want to live nearby the river or conduct business near the river. And related to that, enhancing your economic clusters, both existing and future. So jumping ahead here, that's everything from making sure that your business parks, like the Valley Green Business Park, have the types of amenities that will continue to make a place like that competitive. So more and more we're seeing business parks like Valley Green adding things like open spaces and walking trails, restaurants to serve the people who work there. You've already done great things like the Quarry Lake Park and Trail that people use, on the lunch hour. That's a good model. Those types of things really help to enhance the value of your economic spaces. Diversifying housing options. We've had a lot of discussion about housing through the course of this planning process, and the housing needs of your community are closely linked to your economic state. And we have identified a need for more diverse housing options. They need to be high quality, well designed, but to provide a broader array of choices, both for people who live in this community now who may want a different type of housing product that isn't available, so maybe empty nesters who want to downsize, but also providing housing that can serve your employment population. We've identified this disconnect between a lot of people live in Shakopee and travel outside of the city every day to work. A lot of people travel into Shakopee to work and don't have housing here. So trying to strike that balance between jobs and housing. And part of that is identifying the best locations for the right type of housing. So proximity to transit and employment centers in particular when we're thinking about newer, in some cases, denser types of housing. This one's a little more specific. We're really interested in the opportunity that you have in revitalizing First Avenue. This was already touched on in the Highway 101 market study that was done a few years back. There are a lot of great ideas there that we've really carried forward into this plan. We see a great opportunity in that First Avenue, like Highway 101, is a gateway into Shakopee itself as it evolves into First Avenue. As you travel to the west, it really becomes the gateway into downtown. There are a lot of underutilized pieces of property along the corridor, aging commercial sites that could be opportunities for redevelopment over time as the private market is ready to introduce new development. Could be opportunity to fill some of those needs for new housing types, also retail and restaurant activity that we've heard a lot of desire for from the community. And just improving the overall visual quality of the corridor as people enter downtown, or Valley Green, which is nearby, and the general walkability of the corridor. Another idea is what we call knitting the community together. So thinking about how we connect people to the various destinations that they're trying to get to, and to connect people to people. This can be done through some of the things I just talked about with First Avenue and taking those concepts and applying them elsewhere in the community. It's a combination of getting really high quality, well-designed private development when the private market is ready to introduce new development, and marrying that together with well-designed public realm improvements, so the street design or trail design that connects people to those new destinations. And making it easier for people to get where they want to go, whether it's by car or bike or foot or transit. And part of that is connecting people specifically to nature, to the great park system that you have. We've heard a lot of interest in the community, both in the quality of the parks that you have. There's a lot of community pride in the parks and open space system that you have, and desire to continue to build on that as part of Shakopee's identity. So we've touched on access to the river, but also your other natural features, wetlands, woods, your prairie landscapes that you have here, through completing critical gaps in the trail system, improving signage and wayfinding, so that it's easier for people to know where they're going and to get from park to park and open space to open space. Fostering civic life in civic spaces. This relates to some of the things we've talked about with downtown and also the riverfront, and just generally throughout the community. We've heard a lot of desire from people in Shakopee to just be able to interact with their fellow community members, with their neighbors. And that generally happens in public spaces. That's done through public events like Rhythm on the Rails that was really successful last year. I'm sure it will be again this year. Events at Heber Park, but not just in downtown, not just along the river, finding other locations throughout the community to serve various neighborhoods and bring people together through spaces and events. Part of enhancing the overall quality of life by making it easy for people to get out and interact with fellow Shakopee residents. We want to make sure that Shakopee is positioning itself for the new economy. You've been really successful over the past few decades in attracting manufacturing, logistics, industry, and really creating a niche within the Twin Cities region. And we want to make sure that you're both continuing to capitalize on those sectors and also being ready to attract new sectors as the economy changes. So thinking about that next version of the manufacturing sector, we're moving into an era of automation and robotics, higher technology, making sure that Shakopee is employing strategies to attract those types of businesses or to support the businesses that you have here today that are already evolving and changing as technology changes. So thinking about creating what we call an advanced economy corridor, Shakopee's position within the region in attracting clusters of different sectors of the advanced industrial economy. And that's connecting your different economic clusters together. So the Valley Green Business Park, it's already providing great spaces for a lot of different types of employers. Downtown is part of that puzzle as well. To attract your knowledge employment base who wants to be in a place like a walkable downtown. And then thinking about the next phase of economic development in the West End and positioning that greenfield for the best types of economic generation that you can attract to what will be the next phase of major growth in the community. And part of that, we want to think about sparking the startup culture here too. And this is really where downtown can fit into the mix. Fostering entrepreneurship amongst people that live here in the community, especially those who live here and maybe travel outside of the community on a daily basis for work, but might desire to start out on their own and maybe do that here in the community that they call home. So thinking about creating spaces or fostering the creation of co-working spaces or maker spaces where people can get together and share knowledge and share resources as they're starting up and trying out business ideas. That might be something like a business incubation facility. Also thinking about partnerships potentially with a technical or a community college to really attract workforce development and high technology workforce development here in the community. Again, thinking about people who live here and work elsewhere or vice versa, supporting the regional transportation system and improvements to it really will be critical to Shakopee's future. So we have a lot of traffic congestion, as we've talked about in other work sessions and with the public. Especially on the highway, the Bloomington Ferry Bridge, supporting efforts at getting bus rapid transit into Shakopee we think would be really beneficial to relieving some of that congestion, making it easier for people to get to and from their jobs. And part of that is encouraging transit-oriented development around your park and rides or specifically your existing transit station at Marshall Road. And it's not just about transit, it's strategic improvements to the highway system to improve automobile travel, and thinking about a holistic approach to improving the overall transportation system here. And finally, we call this Celebrate Big Fun. You've got, as I started off with, you have this niche in the region, not just as a place of commerce, but as a place of recreation. People come here, millions of people are coming here on an annual basis and spending time having fun in the land of big fun. So looking at strategies to continue to capitalize on that, these assets that you have with with Canterbury Park, with Valley Fair, Mystic Lake, nearby. And just the natural environment that you have, the river that you have. It's not just these one-point destinations, but it's this idea of knitting all of these together and creating physical relationships between them, fostering partnerships between them. Some of those things are already happening. And really embracing this as part of Shakopee's identity as the premier place to come south of the river to recreate and spend time. So those are the high-level big ideas. And what we've also done as part of this plan is we've made an effort to try to envision and illustrate what some of these things could look like. So I'd like to share some of these, what we call aspirational visions of these big ideas. And I do want to preface, these are illustrations. Any plan, any plan, whether it's something we draw on a map or show on an illustrative rendering, it's an idea that would have to go through a lot more steps to be realized, and may end up looking a little bit different. But this is to set a vision and chart a course towards implementing some positive change in the community. So thinking about that big idea, creating a fresh impression, I mentioned Highway 101. This is a view coming into the west. You're all familiar with it. It's a pretty standard highway environment. You see some industrial activity, not a lot of visual interest here. We'd like to think about a different way to approach this through landscaping, through creating some really high quality community signage, borrowing some of those ideas that you've already implemented in downtown with some of the new signage, and introducing that as soon as people come into the community, and thinking about how you can use landscaping to sort of buffer the view towards some uses they're great economic uses, but maybe not the most attractive thing for people to see when they're first entering the community. And really making Highway 101 the signature gateway into Shakopee. And then taking some of those ideas and spreading them out to other gateway locations and corridors so that as people are entering Shakopee, they're struck by the visual presence and identity of the community. Another vision is, as I mentioned, revitalizing First Avenue, thinking about how some underutilized sites may redevelop in the future. I want to stress that none of this will happen overnight or in the course of just a couple of years. Change is incremental. So we can think about this in sort of phasing. So this is a view of 101 or First Avenue. Near downtown, approaching downtown. We have some older commercial development here. Could be opportunities for redevelopment if a property owner chooses at some point to take that step. And so starting with the existing condition today and thinking about, well, what if one site were to redevelop with some mixed use development? Maybe it's residential or office over ground floor retail, restaurants. Creating a better connection between the building and the street and starting to make a little bit more of a walkable environment along First Avenue. And that might be a first phase, and maybe an adjacent property could redevelop. Again, this location might be one of the few locations in the community where it's appropriate for some multi-story, denser, mixed-use development in close proximity to the river and to this commercial corridor. And again, that can be replicated over time as the market is ready to deliver those types of products. And as that character, that private development character changes the overall character of First Avenue and starts to make it a more walkable type of corridor, then we can see opportunities to improve the public realm, the right-of-way, to add things like street trees and pedestrian amenities. Maybe it's a median that can help with access management in some locations. Again, a general vision, and it wouldn't necessarily happen in this particular phasing, but just to reinforce this idea of incremental change that can happen with a good plan in place to set the vision of what's acceptable to happen in the community. Another big idea, this idea of better connecting to the river, rediscovering the river, building on the great success of Heber Park, looking just to the other side of the bridge to Levy Drive, where we already have some denser residential development. We know there's interest in some additional redevelopment in this area. And thinking about what could be another great civic space that would really provide physical and visual connections to the river. And so there's a lot that we're showing here, and certainly something that would take a lot of more detailed planning to implement if this is a vision that the community would like to pursue. But really opening up access to the river, creating path connections directly down to the water's edge, canoe livery, terraced seating, building on the idea that you already have with the gazebo that gets people out there to overlook the river, but creating as many overlooks as possible, and even taking the old decommissioned bridge that's part of the bike trail network and thinking about how to monetize that and create really a linear park in the bridge itself with all of that space that you have there. There are a lot of great spaces that could be made here to really connect and make this another gateway, a city's front door from the north. And then, where there's additional opportunities for redevelopment, whether it's restaurant activity, commercial space, right there at this sort of beachfront property here in Shakopee. Thinking about improvements to your trail system. This is the Drainage Way Trail in close proximity to the recreation center that's shown here in the background. We heard a lot from the public about a desire to have, they love the trail system. It can be pretty hot out there, sunny days in the summer, where some shade would be helpful for people that are going long distances. And again, difficult for people necessarily to know what part of the trail system to use to get to a certain destination. So how could we start to introduce some of those things, whether it's signage, wayfinding to help people know where to go, which way to turn, adding some landscaping, adding some trees, whether it's along the street or along the trail, and just creating a more hospitable environment for people to spend time as they're recreating in the community. We've also heard a lot from people about concerns with safety along some of the major roadways in the community, particularly around the schools. 17th Avenue is a prime example, as I know you're all aware. Pretty wide roadway, residents on one side, school on the other, not necessarily very easy for children to get from one point to the other. So how can we think about some strategic investments in pedestrian crossing improvements and improving the walkability of places like this to make safe routes to school? Certainly it's not just about getting to schools, but where we know that there are people that would walk or ride a bike somewhere nearby, finding ways to improve the roadway, balancing the needs of automobile traffic. You still have to move traffic through the community. It's all an effort at balance. Also important to acknowledge that many of the roadways here in Shakopee aren't under the city's jurisdiction for operation and maintenance. So this is an example of a need to collaborate with Scott County and find the appropriate design solutions to implement improvements like this. And then moving to the south and the west, looking at that next big phase of economic development and mixed-use development, with the annexation agreement in place with Jackson Township, thinking about the future of the West End. So we have a lot of underutilized ground or ground that's currently still being cultivated, a few business uses out here, but a lot of opportunity for development. So what could that look like over time? And this certainly wouldn't happen overnight either. We're looking from the Highway 41 interchange here, this plan that is at the bottom of the image, and the bluff is in the mid-ground there, preserving that as an open space linkage, and an opportunity to introduce some additional housing types along the bluff to take advantage of that open space, and then providing housing in close proximity to new employers here, really creating that next piece of this advanced economy corridor, linking the west end up 69 and 169 to Valley Green and downtown, and connecting all of these places together. And then the final illustration that we have, I mentioned earlier, supporting this idea of bus rapid transit into Shakopee as part of the regional system, and thinking about the next potential stage of life for the Marshall Road Transit Station. It's a great asset that you have already. Over time, again, thinking long-term, what we see, the trends in land use and development are moving more towards our aging shopping centers, beginning to infill parking lots, infilling with development as automobile usage changes and parking needs change. So we can think, again, incrementally about infill and redevelopment over time. So starting with the Marshall Road and 17th Avenue area today, there could be phased redevelopment of some underutilized parking areas, and adjacent underutilized land, and that idea of slowly infilling development. Existing buildings can remain, but we can start to add some density where it makes sense, which is near an interchange, near a transit station, where people have good access to quality transportation. And again, over time, through private development and market forces, we can introduce additional housing options or mixed-use development options. And then, what might the transit station itself become as a more robust system and another center of economic activity here in Shakopee in close proximity to the highway. So again, that idea, that sort of phased approach to thinking about how land use and development and your transportation system can evolve, that's an important part of this plan, because we want to make sure that we're establishing a vision that everybody can understand, but also allow people to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. And if these are the types of things that the community is interested in seeing, or at least allowing to happen, this plan can provide strategies to make sure that as these types of changes do happen, you're guiding them, and that they're not happening at a pace that the community is not ready for, or that infrastructure is not ready for. All of these things have to happen concurrently. Decisions about infrastructure, capacity to support new development in different areas of the city, and what your priority investments for capital improvements will be. So with that, I'd really like to open up to questions and discussion. Again, there's a whole lot more than what I've shown here in this many multiple pages of document, and plenty to digest over the course of the next number of months as it goes through this review period. Happy to answer any questions about anything that I've gone over here, or anything else that you've had the opportunity to read in the document thus far. I know you haven't had a whole lot of time with it yet, but really look forward to hearing your feedback and thoughts.
And we also want to stress that this is an ongoing process, so as you have questions or concerns with the document, or things that you particularly like, as Eric said earlier, call, email, let us know, and we'll take a look at those things as well.
Do you want to come and join us
Sure,
here at the
absolutely.
table with Eric? And maybe we can just go around here a little bit and offer comments or questions. Mike?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to ask, where can the general public find this draft and start looking through it?
So tomorrow, we will be uploading the entire document to the Envision Shakopee website, envisionshakopee.com, and it will be available for everybody to download and review.
Is there a tool, or is it just to email back if you have comments or questions on it, or is there
We'll have a comment field available on the website.
And then would this more briefer executive summary be on there as well?
Yeah, we can divide that out
Yep.
into a separate section.
Well, what I really like about, I did go through the whole document, and I think we'll probably have to have a meeting to talk about some of the different tabs I have here, but I really like the idea that it is readable. I mean, it's a lot of pages, so but for the general public, they can read it, they can understand it. It's visionary, especially with the big ideas. I think that's important. Have some concerns there, and you brought up one with, seems like some of the ones you want to, on the streetscapes, things were all county roads. And that may be a little more difficult, a little more planning and involvement in that. I like those ideas. Some of them will be easier than others. But change is always hard, and you have to come at it and say, how can we improve what we already have? So with that, I'll pass it along, and we'll get to some specifics in a little bit.
Counselor Morkel?
I think for me, some of the takeaways were obviously, I really focused on what you kind of showed here tonight. I mean, that's kind of the overview of where we're going. And it was interesting to look at redevelopment at this point and at this juncture, because I think a lot of what we've been doing is just planning for what's open, because we have so much space. And seeing even just how I looked at the Target Kohl's parking lot kind of filling in with things which, again, are private property, which we'd have no control over, but it could have those opportunities to open that up. But I think for me, the one thing that I would have liked to see in this piece was the housing options and how those might change and develop over time. Because we are, seeing that people are not buying traditional homes like they used to, and with the tax changes, that's kind of changed how big people buy homes. And so it'd be interesting to see how that might change with this process. And some of those visuals, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's not that it's not in here and we're talking about it, it's just the visualization of what that might look like. And we did have it downtown, but I'm talking about more of what's already in the housing developments. So.
Oh, in the existing residential neighborhoods? Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So. And then I liked the ideas. I liked how it was broken out. Really excited to see some of the conversations that I've heard being put into the document. So that was exciting. So, and I will stop there for now.
Okay. Do you want to comment, Mike? Do you offer questions or comment? Okay. I really want to thank MKSK, your staff. Eric, you guys have done a great job. Thank you. The public engagement to get at least to this point, are we halfway here with the initial draft? We've come a long way. Our residents came to our meetings, they went online, they commented to help build the document and release the vision for that, so that was great. This is pretty bold. It's not dry, like I've been through a couple other comp plans. It has illustrations of what the future could be, which I think was lacking in the past. I think it's bold. If we were sitting here in 1980 and trying to think out 30-plus years and going, what Shakopee look like, I don't think any of their comp plans had us where we are today. So I think this is a better document today compared to those documents in the past to lead us into the future, and I think that's good. For your 12 big points, I guess I have some comments on, create a fresh impression, and I got that through your slides. However, I think we're already doing it. I think Shakopee is branded. We need to enhance our brand and carry that forward. I think that's important. The entryway signs have been one of my little things for a while, because we have so many different areas. We're now, here a couple weeks ago, we did some development in our old mall area, and we were talking about signage up at 169 and 69, because that's a key entryway, or an enhanced entryway now. Even if you think of Marshall coming south on 42 or 101, we have a sign over by Memorial Park, and it says historic Shakopee, but I think at that speed, the sign's too small. We actually had a sign in our downtown that was too small for even a little slower speed. It was hard to read. But I think we're already enhancing our brand with Chief Shakopee, our new signage at least downtown. How to take that back out to the edges, to the entry points, I think is good. Rediscover the river. It was great to see the meetings I went to and the comments that the love of the river is there. Instead of turning your back, we should engage that. I know Huber Park was a long, time coming, but it's here now. Let's go to the next level. One was Huber Park 10 years ago. I think diversity of housing options, in the last several months, we've platted some new housing areas, and I think there is a range of housing from market rate apartments to townhomes to affordable housing. Pretty good range of housing. Also, in the document, it used some stuff from the county and actually the live and learn aspect of scale. I think that Shakopee has a lot of older stock, which is affordable housing and unique. Maybe someone who wants to live in a new house, that's great, but maybe they're gonna start off in a starter home that is smaller, older, that might take a little elbow grease, a little effort. I think revitalizing First Avenue, actually the county worked on that many years ago and re-streetscaped that. Did it go, to the next level? It took us up a grade, right? But certainly then you want that next step in there, and like you said, the couple of these are county roads, and they're great to move from point A to point B, and the county likes to do that in a safe, efficient manner, and it's very sterile. 101, 17th Avenue. I think foster civic spaces through the events that we have in our community, and especially downtown. Could we carry that to Southbridge? Could we carry that out to another area? That would be great, because then you get more opportunity to enjoy those things. Position for the new economy, I immediately think of the West End, and I do think, along with the housing options, that business park, corporate area there for manufacturing or office space, that's just like Valley Green was 30 years ago when they had all the raw land. And that has served us well if we can duplicate that, because Valley Green's kind of full. It's full, and we will face redevelopment opportunities there. Well, then we don't have the raw land, and that's where that West End comes in. I think we all support regional transportation with 169, that built in 96, and it's at overcapacity now, and we always pound on the table, we want an extra lane, and we want something. I think the numbers of, even coming from the even farther southern suburbs through our area, the impact. I'd love to have the ADT count that was designed it for in 1990 when they were getting ready to build it, compared to the ADT average daily trips from today, and see what that capacity, because I think it looks like we're at capacity. Celebrate big fun. I agree that we have 10 million visitors here in our community a year to come to visit those attractions. If we could just get them to stay overnight a night or two, and then have our own history aspect. We talk about that in downtown. I think that's a draw. I keep on saying every time I go into a small town, I go right to their history aspect in their downtown. What are they all about? What are they known for? What's this city known for? It's a good tool. It's a good guide. It's a plan. It has vision. I think in the past, is it perfect? No. Because we do comp plans from time to time, comp plan amendments. A good plan, maybe you won't have one but two. If you have 100 comp plan amendments, you know, then the plan was kind of wrong, right? That's how I gauge good policy and procedure and ordinances actually, to how many times they get hit. And I think that some of these renderings, the one that caught me probably the biggest was the one downtown where it showed the staggered seating. That on the other side of Huber Park, and bring that old bridge alive, that'd be fantastic. And think about the things that you could do down there. Think about the gathering, so we talk about gatherings places. People love to sit by the water and just watch. It's a soothing, calming thing. Get to see wildlife. Your idea about Marshall Road, I was a little perplexed because that's a newer development in the last 20 years. By the time the transit station got there, it was it was an auto dealership. And then all the land around there was basically gone. There was housing to the west, but then all that retail there, and you go, how would I turn that around to be more transit orientated with more transit? So I'll have to get a better handle on how that would look in the future. But I think to be at this point, I'm excited for tomorrow night. Also, the opportunity for the public to be engaged in this. Here's a plan, because they kind of told us what they wanted and what they liked and what they didn't like, and here's kind of their thoughts on paper. So I think this is a good step as we at our halfway point.
We're gonna go around again?
Yeah, we
Great. No, and I agree with you. The biggest asset to this whole project is that the public was the first to be brought into it, and it's the public's idea. It's not us sitting around a table, or what do we do next? Because we get to do that regularly, but having the public come in and talk about it, and just to touch on a few of the big ideas again, and then I'll get into some little more nitty gritty. The fresh impression, I agree. You come into Shakopee, and first thing you get hit with is our Blue Lake sanitary sewer plant out there, and anything we can do on that front, I think, is a great idea.
Thank you, Met Council.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the infrastructure, but let's
And
put a
that's
smiley
another,
face on it.
that's another point, I'll get to in a little bit about the capacity on some of those sewer issues. If we're gonna expand to the west where we need to go. The rediscover the river part of it, I've been talking about that for years. I think that's one of the highlights. I'll put a star by that one. The diversify of the housing, I wanna be very careful with that one. I got open to that page. What you've heard, we went through a glut of a lot of townhomes. And a lot of folks call them the chicken coops because they all look alike and they're just all in one area. And I agree with, you need to have all sorts of those different aspects, but we got to make sure they're combined in different clusters, but not all in the same area. On page 95, you talk about units of co-housing and tiny houses, and I get a little bit worried about that when it comes to property values. And, I don't have a problem with someone subdividing and putting in, a granny pad but not necessarily the pod type situation where you're not collecting taxes on it. It's good for a while, but what does it do to your neighbor's property value? So that's a concern of mine. I'll jump around here a little bit. I like the idea of diversifying the housing options and options and affordability too. I think we have that older stock, which it turns over, but we have to be able to work with our business partners too, and there's different wage structures there too. We talked a little bit about it revitalizing First Avenue. I think there's some space constraints there. I remember the argument, I saw your rendering and I thought it was great with the plantings in the middle, but they had to fight to get that extra turn lane just to get the fit in the buildings there. There's a lot we can do down there with lighting, landscaping, trees, things like that. So there's opportunities there. Another star for the knitting the community together. I'm sure you heard it a lot in your meetings. We seem to have different clusters of our city, and anything we can do to try and tie those together and bring them together. And it kind of jumps to that civic life portion too on number 8 here. How do we have those opportunities to get people together? And I know we do Night to Unite in different events, but meeting up with your neighbors and having those places to do that is good, and it kind of goes with the connecting people to nature, too. The new economy, you know, we kind of let the economy drive that a little bit, and we've really been working towards that, but sometimes is it out of balance with what we have for our infrastructure and needs? You know, that's always the question. Another star for the startup community, the startup culture, fostering those entrepreneurs. If we can make that happen, you know, I think we'd just be adding new businesses to town as they grow and get bigger, and you know, sometimes they fail, but hey, you
gotta try.
gotta try. The transportation thing is gonna be key for this city, and I know you've known that, and we were talking about that earlier with people sitting in traffic. The mayor talked about celebrating big fun and how do we get people to stay, and I've been kind of, I do RVing and camping, and I've always thought maybe we could take one of our parks and do the campground kind of thing to get people to stay overnight, maybe not on a, you know, definitely not on a permanent basis, so we have those more mobile home type parks, but actual recreational week kind of thing, so they can come and visit and stay. I think we have some opportunities there, maybe Quarry Lake Park, maybe other areas near some of those places. In the township, you know, as we grow into Jackson Township and the Highway 41 area, I think that's going to be real key, and I mentioned it a little bit. There's some partners with our public utilities, with our MUSA area. We're going to have to bring the Met Council along, and we're going to need that sewer capacity. We're going to need water towers. There's a lot that goes along with that, and I think that is something that we need now, and because it takes so long to get it moving. And then one of the points, and I found I have a tab in here, but it talks about those dates. It's an area that has on page must be page 283. It has your existing MUSA in different timelines, and some of that area by Highway 41 is scheduled for 2030. You know, that seems like it's 12 years away, but you know, this stuff could be needed a lot sooner, and could actually, if we had the capacity there, and that road gets done in a certain amount of time, that area could pop a lot faster. And I'm thinking these are all these dates of 2030, 2050 for some of the other part of the township, I know, but those dates might come and go pretty quickly.
And that's a really good point. That's one of the sections where there is some ongoing study being conducted by the city, and you're all aware. So that will be some refined content moving forward as those studies are finalized.
And I do understand this is a flexible document. This is a guide. And I know, you know, we can say we're going to do something in this guide about First Avenue, and it might not happen. You know, there might be other constraints. So, and I want the public to know that, first of all, this is a draft, that it's a guide. We're going to work towards this and use this as some visionary ideas, but nothing's set in stone. And I think, you know, with on 285, it talks about, you know, your infrastructure needs and aligning that with the MUSA, and we have to get the Met Council to align that with our growth, and that may be a little harder than we like to think. But a few other things other than that, this is moving in a great direction, and I love the big ideas, and some of the renderings here, like the mayor was talking about, really make you think. That, and I agree with you about that other side of Levy Drive. It always costs money. If you can vision it, you know, you can really sell some of these ideas and move things forward. And getting back to the river, not sure about. I'd like to see a little more ability to have boat traffic down there, but you know, hey, that's something that we can move forward to. So I really love that idea too.
I just have actually a couple questions rather than rehashing a lot of what Councilor Whiting said. And do you have any idea how many Minnesota communities are doing what we're doing right now?
So there are at least 170 jurisdictions within the Met Council region. So it's all 7 counties, all the townships, and all the cities. So there might be some other communities outside of that 7-county jurisdiction that are going through a comprehensive planning process, but I don't know
Yeah,
exactly.
I was wondering, like, this type of process, the newer type of process, that's, I guess is where I was going with. But I think that I'll reiterate what Counselor Whiting said, is that, you know, the interesting thing is our citizens have really done the work. And so what it's telling me is also, it's not only a document for the city of Shakopee, but for our regional partners, whether it's the county or Met Council or the state. It's telling them what we as a community envision for our future. And that as we work towards these goals, these are how they can partner with us. And it's not a surprise to them when things come up or we have asks, so.
It's a really good point. It touches on something I wanted to come back to that you touched on, Councilor Whiting. Part of doing renderings like this is painting a picture that maybe people hadn't envisioned but can get behind, and inspiring partnerships, and maybe inspiring public-private partnerships to create things like a new riverfront park space. There are a lot of great examples out there of you know, an initial vision inspiring private investment to actually advance a public improvement. So those are the types of things that we can think about how to use the plan strategically.
And also, you know, traditionally, this city has never really asked the state for anything in regards to bonding. And we now we can show, you know, this is kind of what we're thinking about. You know, we would like to get our legislators behind us and support those efforts and actually go to the state and say, listen, you know, we've never really come before you. I mean, Savage just got money for a statue of a horse, which is not a bad thing. But the point being is that, you know, it's kind of our turn. And we now have something we can go to them and say, these are the things that we're looking at.
I think, you know, as we grow as a community, that you're right. I see a lot of other communities asking every legislative session for something in their community. We've never been big on that. Part of the livable communities out of the Met Council could be an opportunity as well. You see the metro area communities for the Met Council and what they've given, you know, St. Louis Park, Apple Valley, Ramsey, all those communities. But then you look at the state and look at where those dollars are. They go to Rochester, they go to St. Cloud, they go to Alexandria, they go to Duluth. You know, no reason why we can't be there. I think one of the major goals of the comp plans for all our communities in the 7-county metro area, even though I think they look at 9, is to put these community plans together, and then that helps the Met Council plan their long-term goals, community, and then how does it look, where are those communities going, and how does it look, and then go like that for their infrastructure, especially on sewer. I know the long-term sewer aspect is actually the siting of another plant across the river over in the Chesk area, and then that would take some capacity off our line and put it to that new plant, and then free up capacity here for us in the west end. You know, that's their long-term plan, and how our growth triggers that, or how they do that and stuff. But I think that this is a much different plan than I've seen it before. And you guys have really put some thought into it. I like that it's condensed down to, I know there's, you know, all those big points that have to be in a comp plan, the infrastructure, the parks, all that stuff, but to condense it down to the 12 points that tell the story about where you're going, the vision, the plan, and again, it's just a guide, and then the continued opportunity for the public to comment.
I don't want to beleaguer the points, but, you know, I think when we started out, we wanted a plan that we weren't just going to put on a shelf or just check the box for the Met Council. And we really accomplished that by getting the community involved, creating that vision, you know, and that's the name of it, Envision Shakopee, and that's what we're trying to do with it. And I hope that we can continue on with that and use it for many years.
Kathy, more? Less?
No, I think I'm good. I think the 12 big ideas is a great place that we're at, and it'll be great to see what the community thinks starting tomorrow. And we have that process going forward. Now, this has to be turned into Met Council, the December 2019?
So we actually sought an extension partly to finish up some of
Okay.
that technical study. So we have until next year. So
Okay.
we've given ourselves a little bit more breathing room, which is helpful.
Okay, because I was thinking it was 2018, and then I was like, where are we at?
Yeah, they
So
offered an extension, and most
Yeah.
communities at this point are actually
we're
seeking
taking
that.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mike, comment, question? So it's gonna be available to the public tomorrow. We're having a public meeting tomorrow. But it has to be circulated to our adjacent communities in the county, right? And likewise, we're gonna get theirs back. And then we're gonna do that over the next, you said 6 months, Eric?
Right, so we have a 6-month minimum.
Okay.
We are already receiving a handful of adjacent jurisdiction plans. We are hoping to spend July and August really hearing back from the community, continuing to refine, and then bringing that forth to you in September to kind of give the blessing to send that out to our affected and adjacent jurisdictions, and then kind of building that out for 6 months from that point, where we'd continue to refine, take in feedback from other communities, continue to refine, and then bring that forth to the city council for, it takes an approval. There's an approval first, then we send it to the Met Council for their review.
Right.
We refine and then adopt.
So, if council has more comments, as you read through there 2 or 3 times and email them to staff, Eric, or Bill, I encourage the public to continue the engagement. Tomorrow's a public meeting, but you're gonna be able to comment online as you read it. This is the opportunity to help our path forward to 2040, and you've done a great job so far, and come and let's finish the job together and get a great plan.
If I may, Mayor Marza, just want to thank council for undertaking this effort. We're really pleased to see Shakopee, thinking differently about comprehensive planning. These are the types of comprehensive plans that we like to work on. We don't want to work on the stale ones either. So we're really excited about the opportunity that we see here for the future of your community. And we've really enjoyed working with staff, Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Kursky, and I want to echo what Mr. Kursky said in the effort that Eric has put into this process. He's been great to work with in guiding this plan forward for your community.
Well, likewise, your firm, and the engagement that you've shown our community, the different style of the plan that we've ever seen before. I apologize, at one of the other meetings, I'll bring in the other 3 comp plans I have, and, like I said, they're dry, and I could probably recycle them through you. But, thank you for your effort and your company's, caring about our community.
And I would also like to thank our partners, HRNA and Tool Design, part of our team not able to be here with us this evening, who have been, incredible assets to this planning process.
Eric, anything else?
Thank you, Eric.
No, I think.
Do you have enough from us for now?
We do, yeah. One thing I do want to mention, this is a big document. We recognize that. We, moving forward, don't plan on printing a number of copies. One, because it's a living document and that can make it really difficult to update when we do have any changes. But 2, most people don't go to printed materials anymore. So most people will access the plan first online. So we really, we have envisionshakopee.com. We want to build that out. And we want to break down the plan into smaller pieces that's really digestible and people can really get the vision from that website without having to read 400 pages.
Is there a way to somewhat summarize the changes that we've made? If I never print out another copy of this and then there's changes, and then how would I identify that? Or is there at least some simple way we can go, yeah, here's a page that was changed, or language, simple? I don't know.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll figure out, we'll print a limited number and we'll make
Okay.
edits as we move forward.
Kathy?
Are we going to have links then tomorrow that are available that we can email our friends and, brag a little bit? But
Well, we want to point people to the.
yes, exactly. So if we can
Yeah.
get that, so we can shoot that out to everyone.
Eric, great work.
Yes.
Justin, Darren, thank you. Great stuff.
Moving on, other business before this, council? If not, Counselor Mokel?
I'll make a motion to adjourn to July 3rd, 2018 at 7 PM.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Further discussion? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned at 8:20. Thank you.